So what you have to imagine, you knew that was going to happen. A lot of sort of noise, okay? Sorry, you're going to have to stop here. Those folders with, the sections that you have. Anyway, so here we are.
Great. No, it's. I love your enthusiasm. Hello, and you're very welcome along to the CESI staff room. Right about now, well, in a few minutes, the continuity gods are going to go mad because the lighting is all different, the camera is different, but who cares? Hello, and you're very welcome along to the CESI staff room. Today in the staff room, we're joined by Helen O'Kelly, and she's going to be talking Microsoft, she's going to be talking Teams, and she's going to be talking ONENOTE. We also have a special guest. Sarah Jane Carey is going to drop into us for about 2 or 3 minutes, and she's going to show us some tricks and tips about how to praise somebody in Teams. You're not going to want to miss that.
So my name is Helen O'Kelly, and I'm a teacher of Leaving Cert Computer Science. I'm one of the Phase 1 teachers, and there's 40 schools, and we're waiting for our current 6th years going to be the first to sit the Leaving Cert of 2020, but we know where that is at the moment, okay? I'm also the school librarian, and then I'm also the IT coordinator. And so I do a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of different sort of angles and inputs. And certainly I would tap into the CESI mailing list, fairly regularly, because I just want to see what keep the temperature, see what's happening out there. So I really appreciate having been able to chat here today with you, Hassan. So I'm going to talk about Teams, and I would say, generally speaking, as you know, schools tend to, in Ireland and I suppose abroad, are splitting between, say, Google and Google Classroom and Microsoft and Office 365. So we're with Office 365. So I would have, in class, I teach computer studies from 1st year to 6th year as well as doing Leaving Cert Computer Science. So through those classes, you're in a computer lab. I use OneNote a lot, okay? It's sort of my cornerstone in terms of how I manage files, and in small classes, in big classes, some of my classes I have 28 or 29. So it's a really kind of good kicking off point to use OneNote class notebooks.
And just to if we roll it back a little bit. So on Thursday, Leo makes the announcement, schools are closed. What is your first step in the platform you're using? And it shouldn't be about the platform, it should be about the teaching and learning, of course, that goes without saying. But the platform enables us. So what's the first thing you do from that point?
Okay, so what we did, okay, so I'm sure we're the school, I'm sure it's like many schools around, the country, there's a spectrum of users in terms of how they're using, let's say Google Classroom or Office 365. So when we were kind of prepping, in those 2 weeks, that there's sort of those first 2 weeks in March, kind of thinking, my goodness, if we do close down, how are we going to switch to going to the online sort of realm, so to speak? So to answer your question, what our first protocol was to make sure that everyone was, comfortable enough with setting up a class notebook, okay, and being able to log in and understanding subtle, kind of gotchas. So, for example, so what do I mean by that? Okay, so when you set up a class notebook, you go in, you have to log into Office 365, but it's good to put in the individual students' names, okay, rather than say a class group, let's say first years, okay, or first year, home economics or whatever. And why is that important? Because when we were learning how to do this, we said, okay, well, these class notebooks, they're going to last maybe for the whole of the junior cycle, okay? So imagine you're in September, you've got your first years coming in, and you want to have it that they'll have this is your digital portfolio. You want it for the 3 years. Students come, students go. So if you put in their names individually, okay, when you're setting up these class notebooks, then there's no hassle in terms of adding a student or deleting a student. Whereas I have gone into a cold sweat because originally I would have set it up as, let's say, first years, and someone left, you do this rollover the following year, and you're trying to add a student, and suddenly you have all your second years in your class notebook, and it's all, and you don't want to lose all that content and stuff like that. So that's why I say put in their individual names. You might think, oh, it's a bit of a pain, but it's worth it. You don't want to go into that cold sweat.
What you're saying is every student has a notebook. So this is more coming from the student point of view than the teacher point of view, if that makes sense. So you're not walking in with a teacher folder with your home economics or your computer studies or whatever. The student is coming to you with their digital copybook, and you're effectively populating it.
Yes, well between the two of you are with the class notebooks. What you have is the teachers will set up the class notebook. So the teacher will have they'll have that set up that collaboration space. So that is useful if in a class you want to generate something on the fly, like opinions and stuff. Now you have to be careful about that as well, obviously. Then you can have this content library section. So that would be where all your handouts were. So going back to your original question, in those 2 weeks in March when we were prepping, with this sort of kind of sensing that we were going to be closing down and moving to, remote teaching, this is what I was saying to all the teachers was showing them how to, copy any of their handouts, into the content library section, explaining, what the collaboration space is about, and that each student would have their individual section. So, you could, copy the file, whatever your latest class notes are, and putting, things like the roll call, where we were originally putting it in the collaboration space, and everyone just go tick, 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 so there were very practical things that were used in the collaboration space. Now, what also happened was that, that they were kind of the first steps. And I know that there were various, there was a report in the Irish Times, and Sarah Jane Carey, who's been on one of these earlier episodes, would have spoken about it. Keep everything small and simple, and that's what I was saying as well. Just do what you're comfortable with doing. So if you're comfortable with just with writing down, there's a few exercises, there's a link, then so be it. But as you sort of progress and get more confident, I was showing other teachers, okay, look at in Office 365, you can, there's audio, okay, and you can record yourself. So, you could record yourself. And I know feedback from some of our students is they really like that because they could listen to the audio, and they could and they're hearing their own teacher that they know, and so they listen back, and that's how they would really learn. And so you can do that as well. So there's some very simple things that you can do in OneNote to get you going, okay? And you can put in links to YouTube, and it's like this digital page. Like that's what it is. It's a digital page. And also what's really useful when we all do go back into class, what I find in the computer lab, or if you have, you've got devices in your classroom, is that it really helps the inclusiveness of a classroom where students can follow the steps of your class, class plan for that day, and because that's what I do. Or if you have a link, certainly I would have links to different, resources. And rather than having to type in, the web address or something like that, you have the link there sitting in OneNote, and the student has to click it, and then off you go. So it's much more efficient. Everyone's sort of, feeling a sense of success, and students of all abilities are able to go at their own pace and follow your class notes. So that's, there are sort of the fundamental reasons why I think OneNote is really helpful.
How do you get to that stage? That's a question everybody has. Is it's all right for them. Like my background as an IT person, I go into a school and I it doesn't bother me what platform you're using, one or the other, as long as there's a correct roadmap put in place on how to use it or how to deploy it. But I often hear, well, it's all right for them, they all have computers, or it's all right for them, they're very young staff. How do you get to that stage of being able to turn around and go, right, we have class OneNote, class notebook, start using it?
Okay, so that I think that's the crux of the matter. Okay, so I think age doesn't matter. I think here the critical thing is time. Okay, um, and it's the time to sit down and take, to look at this. So I remember when I was starting, when I saw this about 4 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, I thought, okay, this is where I want to go. But in my head, I imagined that I had to go through this huge big hedge, of where I have to prep stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my one of my OneNote notebooks that I have here. So I appreciate it. I'm sort of talking in the abstract, and I'm a very visual person. So I'm just going to share this now.
That'd be amazing, because that's really what we want to be able to do, is we want to be able to show on the screen, as opposed to the champions talking about how amazing something is without actually showing what's going on. I do have one more question with regard to Teams, and I'm after pulling that straight off the CESI list. So we'll get to that after you after you show us your desktop. And the sun is coming in. Your sun is blinding me. Where are you?
I'm in Dublin. Okay, so what I've done here is I've shared this tab. So this is it's a OneNote file. Okay, so I suppose, where do you start? Okay, so where do you start? So if you want to use OneNote, okay, your school, and more to the point, if you want to use OneNote with your students, I think that's the critical thing, because OneNote is actually free to download. But if you want to use Class Notebook, and that's the what I have been talking about, where you have this collaboration space, where you have a content library, and then all the students have different sections. Now, I can't share that out just for GDPR reasons. So what I'm showing you is just, let's say, an example of a OneNote file that I would have. So I'll try and simulate what I'm talking about here. So how do you get in there? You if you have Office 365, you just log in, okay, and you have the little tile up here, and you'll have like Outlook and Excel and so on. And there's a little icon there with OneNote, okay? So imagine. And you have to imagine in your head that it's like, you're no longer looking at a big, shelf, maybe beside your desk or wherever you are, with all these big black, manila, folders. Now what you have is, you're looking at a set of these are all that's my bookshelf there. Okay, so you can see that I'm doing a lot of computer studies and computer science stuff. So that's what you have to envisage now, that you now have this sort of bookshelf here. And from a student perspective, what they will see when teachers share out different OneNote folders with them, or files, they will see, like home economics and English and history and geography and whatever the subjects are. Okay, so they will have that in their bookshelf, and they can switch between each one of them. Okay, so I think that's okay. So,
and are the notebooks, does the student have to have a device, or is this cloud-based?
They have to. They don't have to have a device. Okay, so we have to be equitable here. So so for quite a while, actually, in our school, we didn't stipulate that everyone had to have a device. So basically, well, they all have phones, so you actually can download OneNote and all of those different Office 365 apps to your phone. And quite a lot of the students did that. So they were able to check on their phone with the OneNote app. They could see what they had to do. Now, it's not exactly the most advisable place to write an essay or anything like that on your phone, but they could certainly see what they had to do. But when we originally sort of rolled this out, it was, in the computers in the school. Now, what sort of happens since then is, as the junior cycle has ramped up, and, there's, like the current first years are going to have, 8, 10 CBAs. The pressure, we have one computer lab, the pressure on our computer lab in terms of timetable was rising, and so we now have like the first years have to have a device. Okay, so while you can get away with it, you will work even, like, say, more efficiently, and all you need to do is get a tablet. Ideally a Windows 10 tablet. I do see problems if you have an iPad. Some of our students have iPads, and it's problematic, OneNote on the iPads. Well, it works, but there always seem to be sort of kind of battling a bit. So ideally get a Windows 10 a device, and you don't have to spend a huge amount of money. I don't want to plug any particular brand or anything like that, but you don't, as long as it has Windows 10, that's cool.
But with OneNote, it's how you get to that stage. So you deploy OneNote to your staff, or do you deploy 365? So you deploy Office 365 to your school, presumably.
Yeah, so you have Office 365, because then you will have access to OneNote and you will have access to Class Notebook. Okay, so I would suggest that you need to sit down, maybe at some of those Croke Park hours, okay, and maybe get your IT coordinator, or maybe a person who is has done some work already in OneNote, and just to briefly sort of to step into it and just say, so let's say, imagine here, I'm just going to imagine I'm in front of my staff in school. Okay, so I would say, okay, we've got OneNote. So yeah, so what's the big deal? We're hearing about that. Why should I bring this in? Okay, so what you can do is here, I've explained already about all those, you've got all these books. So that's your bookshelf, okay? And then what you have is, these are your sections. So that bookshelf, you have to imagine in your head, what you're looking at in OneNote is a digital version of that, okay? And so here are your different sections, okay? And you can color code them, you can do all that wonderful stuff in here. So this is my librarian stuff coming out with me. So in each section, as you know, from those folders, you have lots and lots of pages, okay? And you would have, opened those ring binders, and you have to, insert the pages wherever you want. So there are many advantages to OneNote, because you can create a page, down here on the fly, I should say, and you can call it, like, let's say, let's talk about summer 2020, okay? And this is what you have to imagine, that's your digital page, and you can put what you want on it. So you might very simply say, let's just say learning outcomes, okay? You're just here, and then you can do a tab, and it makes this little table, and you can put in 2.1, whatever it is. And I'm saying this because I'm used to this from the Leaving Cert Computer Science, okay? So you type in whatever, okay? And then you might say, okay, you might want to put in a link to some YouTube video. So I have a video here that's, there's a channel there. So just copy that link there, okay? And then go back to OneNote, okay? And you can paste in, you can see all these inserts here, okay? And insert a link. It's going to go learning. I can put in a link there and insert. So this is what I was saying earlier. And you could then, let's imagine you've done a little bit more work and you're happy with that, okay? Now, what you could do is to tie it in with Teams. You might want to set up a Teams meeting, okay? And you could put in the link to that Teams meeting here as well if you wanted to, okay? That's what I do with some of my classes, as well as the calendar. So because some students are used to going into OneNote, and it just gives them different avenues of getting into the Teams meeting.
And that brings us nicely onto Teams. So tell us about Teams. Teams is something I should know more about than I do, but I don't. So how does Teams pull everything together?
Okay, so the way I see Teams was, I see OneNote as the cornerstone of your content that you can use, for your class plans, for your homework, for your digital portfolio, which, at junior cycle, you need to have that, okay? And I appreciate I'm talking about junior cycle, but I've seen some other messages from primary school teachers. So it's a means of managing, content and work that students are doing at all levels. And so that's where I see OneNote. Okay. Now, how it works in conjunction with Teams is that as we're doing remote learning, it's like a portal, and OneNote is like sort of where you have all your content, and then Teams is where you can have your actual meetings. Okay, so let's just I'm going to share out Teams. Okay, let me see now.
So is it safe to say it's like groups with more?
I don't know if it's groups with more. Certainly, when I did look at groups last year, and when we were in school, I felt that groups was going to add a lot of noise. And what I meant by that was like all chat and stuff, like chat and that sort of social element to a classroom, which is hard enough anyway, I think. So that's why I steered away from groups at the time, and I was able to work absolutely fine with OneNote. And I could be disingenuous now to groups, but certainly with Teams, I actually was slightly hesitant about using Teams until we went into this completely different realm of working with remotely. So now I see, obviously, there's a huge benefit to it, because you've got all the video calls, and you can have this sort of whole portal. So what I'll do is I'll just share out. I'm going to share out my desktop here. So here is a team. Okay, so what is it? So when you set it up, you have this general channel. Okay, and the type of person I am, I always go in when I see any ellipses, I go in there and have a look at it. Okay, so if we look, you can call it whatever you want. Okay, typically I would say call it like Leaving Cert, home economics 2021 or whatever, so you're thinking 2 years in time, so you can roll it over. Okay, so you go in here and you can manage your team. Okay, so again, I think a top tip is to go in and make sure you can go in here and you can have your settings. Okay, so I don't think I have anybody in there. You can have different owners and stuff, different roles. Okay, so make sure your students are members. Okay, and then there's different settings in here that you can do in terms of locking things down. You can have a theme. There's member permissions of who can do what. Now in here, I actually click that off. So that members can't delete their messages, just in case, you know what I mean, they might put something and then remove it. So that's certainly my position on it. Others might differ. So you're kind of locking it down. You might go along here and you can have these mentions, so you can type @ and whatever the team name is, and so you can broadcast a message to them. So there's things you can do there. I don't share that team code with them. You might want to go in the fun stuff, how fun do you want to be? But what's interesting there is you can filter out inappropriate content. Okay, I'd have that as strict. Okay. I do actually, tick off all those. I don't allow them. So I'm not very fun, am I? But you just don't know. You just don't know what could go up there. You know what I mean? So you just have to be really conscious of what's happening there. And now this is interesting here. There's a OneNote class notebook. Okay, now this really exercised myself and my colleagues, because we could see, oh, brilliant, because we had already set up all these class notebooks in Office 365, there. And when we open Teams, okay, when you go back up here, okay, in that general channel here, you'll see that there's a class notebook up here.
Yeah.
And so when you log into that there, okay, and this is important to note, okay.
It is, because this actually brings me nicely, while that's loading up, it brings me nicely onto the question I have.
Okay, so when I looked at this first, and when we looked at this first, we said, oh, fantastic. Okay, so now we have Teams. We can bring in the class notebook that we already had set up, and so you have, as I say, this is the whole portal here, and you've got assignments here, and you've got grades, and then you can add on extra things here as you want. If you click on that, you could all of these different apps, okay? And what I kind of like was you can put in this website, and you might have, a website that you want to go to, like say with the computer science, we use Replit, okay? But just going back here to Class Notebook, what we discovered was this creates a completely new class notebook. It's stored in a different location.
Okay.
And that is important, because what happened was we were getting, it was out of sync with our original Office 365 notebook. So here's a really, I did a lot of research and we looked around a lot at Microsoft Forums. So this is really important, is that the way we use it is that we just say to all our students, you just stick with Office 365. We don't link or make up any Teams class notebook at all.
Okay. So is that does that relate to the following question, which is if this came into the CESI list, and just wants to ask a question on behalf of a colleague. She was using OneNote class notebook for her classes, and she has decided to put everything together in Teams. When set up Teams, she can set up class notebook from her existing ones. However, only content is copied over from the content library files and folders for her students, but there's no files in those folders. Her question is this: does she get the homework files, the completed work, from OneNote into Teams notebook? Or is there an easier way of doing it? Like, does she manually pull the stuff across, or is there a button that you push that'll just take everything in?
It doesn't, as far as I can see. When you see this set up OneNote class notebook,
yeah,
you can set up one. If you haven't set up a class notebook before, and this person already has one, then you could set up everything. If you haven't set up a class notebook before, then you can do everything within Teams. If you already have a class notebook set up, I would strongly advise you not to start copying any of your content into here, because you're going to, they're saved in separate locations, and so you're going to mix it up. So what I do, and what our like my colleagues that I work with, is that we work within Teams, and then we just you have that separate tab where everyone is working in the original Office 365, that original class notebook that you've got there. So that's what we do. Okay. So just to reiterate, if you've never used a class notebook before, then go ahead and work in the Teams class notebook, because everything is sort of encompassed in that. But if you already have existing class notebooks and you have a lot of content there, then I wouldn't start copying it in, because it's just a copy, and it's like it's a save as. That's effectively what you're doing. And students might be putting in homework in that the original class notebook location, and it's not coming across. So just that's the only thing, the only issue that I actually had with Teams, and it took us a long time to kind of work it out, and a few sort of tears, let's say. But that's it. But as I say, if you've never done it before, then go ahead. Mm-hmm.
If you have any questions that you want us to answer with regards to Teams, or indeed class notebook, drop us a line or email us on the CESI list. You can get us on Twitter at CESI Tweets. You can get us by going to www.cesi.ie, joining the list, and put up your question there, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Basically, to date, what we've done is we now have a very substantial panel of experts that are more than happy to demonstrate any question you have right here in the CESI staff room. Keeping with the Microsoft theme, we're going to go across to Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane has a short tutorial on how to praise students within Teams. It's a very small thing, but I do think it'll mean an awful lot to some students.
So today I want to give one of my students recognition for something that they have done or achieved. Maybe you run a competition every week and you give a particular student praise every week, or you want to recognise them for doing something like a little mini award. So I'm going to go to the class, my geography class, and in here, under the general channel, there's posts. So underneath here, you can see there is Meet Now, emojis, attachments, formatting the text. And then also here is this little image that's like a ribbon, and you're going to click that, and that is to give praise. Now, I am going to select a badge to give to one of my students because they were really good this week in presenting their work, and next week it'll be somebody else's turn. So I am going to say that she is awesome. And there's Jenny. And in the message, I'm going to say, great job with your presentation, Jenny. Well done. I can preview it, and I'll see there that this is what will appear on the page, and she will also get a message to say that I have given her praise or recognition for something she did. And the whole group will see that, the whole class will see that. Now, there are some occasions where you might want to give someone praise quietly, some kind of an award privately, and you don't want the whole class to see because maybe they helped you out, or maybe they're struggling a bit and you just want them to know that you're aware of how hard they're working. So for that, you would go into the chat, and you would either pick your student from up here by creating a new chat, or go into the student if you've already been chatting with them. So again, you go to the posts down here, and just be aware she's the only one who will see this. And you click on the ribbon for praise. And this time I am going to say that she is has a really kind heart. So how proud we are of all the effort you are putting in this year. Keep it up. Then I'll preview that. And again, this is what it will look like. And I click send. And Jenny will get that message that she has received praise from her teacher. And that's it. It's just something nice maybe to give the students a bit of a lift.
That's all we have time for today. Again, we've overshot the half hour. I think we saw the half hour 20 minutes ago. But don't forget, we have overshot the half hour, but we want to hear from you. So if you have any questions that you want answered, like the question we put to Helen a few minutes ago, please let us know. You can get us on Twitter at CESI Tweets. You can get us on the CESI list, www.cesilaw.ie, and you can get us on by registering. You'll get your question directly to us. That's all we have time for. So from myself, good luck. Helen, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.